Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kaitlyn and I am on a journey to becoming a single mom by choice. I chose to document my journey here on YouTube just because as I was thinking about starting this process, I turned to YouTube and found some girls that I really connected with that helped me ultimately make this decision. So if I can help one other person, then this is completely worth it. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to link my very first video above. That way you can go back and learn a little bit more about my journey. Today, I really wanted to talk about the cost of IUIs. I have just completed my very first IUI cycle, which unfortunately was unsuccessful. That was a natural cycle with a trigger shot, and now I'm on my second cycle, which this cycle I am doing medicated with a low dose of letrozole and a trigger shot and monitoring and seeing where this goes. So today I really wanted to talk about the costs. Now, full disclaimer, my insurance does not cover any fertility treatment, so I am paying 100% out of pocket for this. You will certainly want to check with your clinic and their fees, their financing options, if your insurance covers anything as well. So definitely take a look at that, but this is just my experience and me paying 100% out of pocket with using a large fertility clinic here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So as I mentioned earlier, I have done basically 1.5 IUI cycles. The first one was completely natural with a trigger shot. The second one is with a low dose of letrozole and a trigger shot. So I'll go into the medications later. But what I really wanted to do was start at the very beginning from my initial consultation and kind of add up the fees for you as to what that looks like. So I paid a $50 copay with my insurance to go in for a consultation to meet with the reproductive endocrinologist and learn a little bit more about my fertility, have my AMH tested, and do a follicle count. That was only a $50 copay for me. Then once we decided that IUIs were probably going to be the place to start. And the reason we decided IUI was the best place to start for me was because I don't have any known fertility issues. My AMH level was still okay for my age. I had a great number of follicles. I just simply am doing this solo and don't have a man and I'm using a sperm donor. So there was no real clear indicators at that time that said you need to go IVF and spend the money for IVF. So we went with IUIs as the first go-to just because it's more affordable. So in order to make sure I was a candidate for IUIs ahead of time, he recommended that I do an HSG test. So that's basically where they inject a dye, make sure your tubes are open. That was $659. So that was a pretty expensive test, but I felt like it was worth it because I want to know that everything looks okay before I spend the money on an IUI. When if everything wasn't okay and I had to go to IVF, I could have just skipped a bunch of the process and jumped right into IVF if the IUIs weren't going to be successful. Everything came out pretty good on the HSG. There was one spot, so they did send me in for a saline sonogram. I just had to pay a $50 copay for that and everything was fine. They thought I might have a small polyp in my uterus and that was not the case when we did the saline sonogram. So that was just a $50 copay there. The other piece that you will have to do is genetic testing. So if you are going to go with a sperm donor, and I'm not sure if you're doing it with a partner, I believe they still want to do genetic testing just to make sure that your child is not predisposed for any genetic diseases or any genetic issues. So I did have to do the genetic testing in order to choose my donor. Now, my insurance did cover some of this. Out of pocket, it would have been $1,958.85. My insurance did cover $1,533.52. So total out of pocket that I paid was $425.33. And that was to have a meeting with a genetic counselor and look at my donor sperm and make sure that we were a match based on my genetic testing and their genetic testing. I did forget one cost, and that was the genetic counseling appointment. I thought that was grouped into my genetic testing, and it was not. It was actually an extra $120 for the genetic counseling appointment, and they will review up to 2 donors when you do that. The other thing, if you were choosing to becoming a single mom by choice, if you're just doing a regular IUI and you stumbled across my channel based on this, this wouldn't apply. But if you are using donor sperm, they do make you go through a counseling appointment just to make sure that you fully understand what you're signing up for and the challenges that you may have in the future with your child, just how to talk to your child about being donor conceived. So I think it's really good that they do that. I do a lot of counseling and a lot of therapy myself, so it's something I already talked about with my therapist, but it is a requirement, and that was a $310 appointment to speak with a counselor. Sperm. Sperm is another big cost of the IUIs, and this is the big difference between IUI and IVF. IUIs, I knew that the chances of it working on the first time were pretty slim, and it would take possibly 3 times for it to work, so I had to buy more sperm. Each vial of sperm was $1,495, and I ended up purchasing 5 vials. The reason I ended up purchasing 5 vials was I figured 3 for IUIs, and if the IUIs don't work, then I would go into IVF, and I had a vial for IVF. Now, the 5th vial, that only equals 4. So the 5th vial I bought just because I said, what happens if I get to the 3rd IUI and I just want to try one more time? So I ultimately bought 5 just to give myself that one buffer if there was anything wrong with one sample, or I just really wanted to try a 4th IUI before spending the money on jumping into IVF. I had that option without having to look for a new donor at that time. So that was something that I ended up doing. Now with the cryobank that I chose, they do offer free storage if you buy 4 or more vials for a year. And they also offer a 1-year buyback program. So basically what that means, if let's say this 2nd IUI works, I still have 3 vials. I only need 1 for IVF in the future to have a full biological sibling for my child. If I choose to do that, I could sell back the other 2 vials and get back half my money as long as they are still storing it and it's within the year of me purchasing it. So I wanted to give myself that option, and knowing I had the buyback option, I felt like it was a pretty low risk. Now, yes, you still do lose $750, but in the grand scheme of this process, it's awful to say, but it's not crazy. And to give myself peace of mind, I felt like that was totally worth it. Oh, I also had to do infectious disease blood work to make sure I don't have any infectious diseases. That also will test you for your CMV status. I am CMV negative, so it was important that I had a donor who was also CMV negative, which is very hard to find. That was $110. So that is it for kind of the pre-work to get to the IUI. I know it sounds like a lot, but it really was not terrible. And then the IUI itself is $1,995 with my clinic. Medicated or unmedicated, it's the same. They bring you in on day 3 for blood work and ultrasound, and then typically around day 11 for a blood work and ultrasound monitoring appointment, and take it from there. That $1,995 does cover all of the monitoring and the blood work and the IUI itself. And then in terms of meds, the meds are really inexpensive, considering the egg freezing meds were much more expensive. So the first cycle, I just did a trigger shot of Avidril, which was $52.50, so pretty minor cost. And then I did progesterone suppositories, which was only about $15 after that. And that was even without my insurance. I could have ran it through my insurance, but too much of a hassle. I said I'll just spend the extra money for the progesterone. So progesterone was $15. Now the second cycle, since the first cycle did not work, I agreed to do a low dose of letrozole. I'm taking 2.5 milligrams of letrozole for 5 days, day 3 through 8. And then I'll go back in on Wednesday this upcoming week for my next monitoring and ultrasound appointment on day 11. So the letrozole was $13 that you can pick up at a regular pharmacy. You do not need to get that from a fertility pharmacy. So that was really helpful and convenient. And yeah, it's just those 3 meds right now. So pretty straightforward. So if you were to add up all of the costs before my IUI actually happened, and then factor in just one cycle of an IUI that is medicated with all 3 meds, letrozole, the Ovidril, and the progesterone, the grand total for one cycle would be $5,324.83. That is a lot of money, but in comparison to IVF, that's typically around 28 to 30, not including meds or genetic testing. It's definitely much more affordable. So IVF, you have a little bit more control of genetic testing the embryos before the transfer. You have a little bit more say in terms of choosing the sex if you want to, and you have that option with your embryos. That is something that I decided I was okay letting go of that control to try to save a little bit of money. The difference of that is a year of daycare. So if it works, that's great. If not, we will cross the IVF bridge when we get there. But again, so each cycle basically is about a little over $2,000 when you factor in the meds. So fingers crossed that it works this time. I am very excited to see how everything is progressing on Wednesday. I will post another video this week just giving you an update on Wednesday as to how this cycle is going and when the IUI actually is. And then you guys really seem to like the pregnancy test last time, so I will film more of those this go around, and fingers crossed that it works, and then I can document my pregnancy with you all. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. I know that's a lot of numbers that I shared today, but it is a pretty involved process and thought that this would be helpful. Hope to see you guys this week in my next one. Bye.